Erin Marcell, Middle School Fine Arts. I started the process by writing a SMART goal so that I could measure and track my progress. My goal is to have all art students write a proper reflection piece for every art project, and 80% of them will receive a level 3 or higher on the grading. A proper reflection defines at least one of the elements of art or principles of art in their description of their project and includes art terminology within the academic vocabulary they use. There are two common core goals that I am focusing on. First being a range of writing, having students write routinely over time, and the second being vocabulary acquisition and use, having students gather vocabulary knowledge through their writing. I have two art goals that I was focusing on for the reflection writing. The first being understands and applies visual art concepts and vocabulary. Students were choosing an art element and principle vocabulary they used in their art piece and explained using the definition and how they used it. The second goal is applies a creative process to the visual arts. This means students are exploring, interpreting, implementing, and reflecting. In the reflective process, they are explaining two strengths they have in either the art piece or their process, and two weaknesses. They are also looking to the future and explaining what they would like to do differently in the future. I started this at the second trimester with just one class. I did this so that I could have more one-on-one time with them, and to work all the kinks out that occurred along the way. Students were writing a reflection after every art project and tracking their growth. They are graded on a 4-point scale. The red dot indicates it is about vocabulary, goal number 1, and the blue dot indicates that it's about the reflective process, goal number 2. This rubric breaks down what each score means. Here's an example of a student's reflection. Students then are able to write into the box, and then as I'm grading it, I will underline with either a red pen or a blue pen. When I see that they are using the art elements and principles, I underline those words and where I see the definitions. In blue, I'm underlining where I see the words strengths, weaknesses, future. Then I provide them with their score, a red score and a blue score, so they can easily track their progress. This is an example of a student growth chart that students have in their sketchbooks. At the beginning, they write down what their first score is, typically for their name tag project. Then they write down what scores they would like to have for their reflection at the end. Then they write down what their goal is for this trimester. Once they've done that, they then go ahead and fill out what things they're going to do to reach that goal. Below, I provide them with a word bank of words that they can use to describe what they're going to do. At the bottom is a graph where they then graph each reflection after they've completed it with their score. At the bottom, there's A, B, C, D, etc., where they write down their project name that corresponds with the graph. Then they apply a red dot or a blue dot, red being vocabulary and blue being the reflective process. I am tracking the student's progress through an Excel spreadsheet. I am then able to graph their scores for vocab and reflective process. Here is an example of a vocabulary graph. The projects are to the left listed, and then the colors indicate where their scores are for each of them. This gives me a clear idea of where students are growing, or maybe they have had growth but then recede on the next project. By third trimester, I was then ready to implement this in every art class. And so I was able to take what I had learned from trimester 2 and guide every art student in the reflective process. Interventions and strategies that I've tried are daily targets, where students are looking at a target at the beginning of class, and at the end of class are then responding to an exit ticket about art terminology and vocabulary. You can see this on the left, where there is an exit ticket displayed and the student has done a writing about that question. I've also implemented other strategies where we have looked at an art piece, and day by day we broke down what a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4 means for the writing. Once in groups they have done this, we underline in red pen where the vocab words are, and in blue pen where the reflective process is. This allows students to see how each rubric score is then broken down. At the end of the trimester, I realized there were groups of students who were still not writing at a proficient or distinguished level, a 3 or a 4. So I pulled these students out into the hall in small groups and had them choose their own art piece that they wanted to reflect on. And then I broke down the reflective process step by having them choose a vocab word from a list, write down their response, and then go step by step what their 2 strengths are, their weaknesses, and the future. And this gave them time to ask questions if they needed to. The difference between my rubrics are my old rubric, I had a space where students would write a tiny reflection of what they would do differently if they were to do the project again. I eliminated that question, and in the new rubric, I then allowed a space at the bottom for reflection. I indicated here in this box where they would write the reflection. I would also give them a cue to get a 3 points. They would need to write 1 vocab word plus the definition, 2 strengths, 2 weaknesses, and the future. Next year, I'd like students to have a booklet for their reflection writing where they would store their reflections, their graphs, and goals. I would also like to incorporate more reading and aesthetic discussions so that students are using and seeing art terminology and vocabulary. I am also going to look at the Common Core goal for literacy, writing history, science, and technical subjects, grades 6 through 8, to allow for me to incorporate Common Core standards.